was 8 years old, and I did not want to be there. I sat beneath the fluorescent lights in my elementary school classroom, and I dreamed of escaping. I would look out the windows to the left, to the little green field next to the school, and the t-ball field beyond it, and the low green hill beyond that, and I would dream of getting out. I was painfully shy, socially awkward, intensely intuitive, and deeply uncomfortable with everything that school represented to me. So I would look out that hill and I would imagine this herd of animals, like rhinoceroses and elephants, and dogs and cats and horses and tigers and bears and lions, and they would come roaring over that hill towards me, and they would kick up the dust on the t-ball field, and they would screech to a stop right in front of that window. And they would make eye contact with me specifically, and they would see me, the shy little girl too scared to speak. And they would invite me out that window, onto their backs, and off to freedom. And I would never have to go back to school again, where I felt so scared and uncomfortable. Because my dreaming wasn't encouraged, I was told to stop dreaming and pay attention. So flash forward 10 years, I'm still pretty socially awkward, I'm going to be honest, in high school. And I'm walking down the hallway, and I see that guy. And every woman in here knows that guy. And he was tall, and he was handsome, and he caught my heart. But I was way too shy to talk to him. So over time, we became friends, and then we fell in love. And he was the first great love of my life. He had this weird self-possessed quality that was totally counter to every other high school boy I knew. And then we went through college together. And he loved me in a way that I'd never been loved before, and introduced me to myself in ways I'd never encountered. 2 months before my college graduation, we had our whole future planned out. We were set. All the vacations we would take, all the things we would do together, where we would live and how. And then on February 21st, 1994, he died. He was killed in a motorcycle accident, and it was a freak thing. He wasn't being crazy. He was getting on Interstate 81. He slipped on a patch of gravel. His motorcycle slid across the highway. And he was struck by a woman traveling north from Georgia, going 55 miles an hour. He died 90 minutes later. And at 1 a.m., I got the phone call from my parents that they were in the parking lot of my apartment, and they were there to take me home for the funeral. And it's hard to overstate what it feels like at age 21 to have all your dreams ripped away from you, to suddenly have a blank slate, and to not know how to fill it. I'm here to talk to you today about the dreams that sustain us through hard times, and the dreams that we cultivate that die in front of us, and how we can create space for new dreams to emerge from that death. So I'm a third-generation educator. My mom taught second grade, my grandmother taught second grade, my brother's a teacher, my sister-in-law's a teacher, we're all teachers. And I've been a mental health professional for 20 years. So I see people both when they're in crisis and when they're in a lot of pain, but also when they're in school and they're learning and they're creating and they're making something new for themselves. And I'm here to tell you that we have a crisis going on. Because the thing I notice most about my students, and I teach graduate students, is they don't know how to dream for themselves. They don't know how to use their imagination. So when I'm in class and I ask them, what do you think? Their response is, what do you want to hear? What I want to hear is what you think, but what do you want to hear from me? And they can't quite make that leap into dreaming. And this is crazy because we're born with it, right? We're all born with it. I was this little dreamer. This is me on the beach. I had no idea my mom was even taking this picture. I was so caught up in my imaginary world. Playing with sand. I didn't even have toys. We're born with it, and yet we lose it. At some point, dreaming becomes doing, and we start accomplishing, and we start checking off boxes on our list, and something inside of us dies. What's funny about dreaming, too, is kids just get it innately. They understand dreaming, and they are down with it from the start. But adults are really tentative about it. We're afraid to show that tender and vulnerable part of our heart. We're scared to show it because we're afraid someone will laugh, or think it's wrong, or tell us it's crazy. But think about this. When you were a little kid, who was the coolest kid? It was the one that got you in so much trouble, the one that had the big dream and idea, and you went out together and you skinned your knees and your elbows and tore up your clothes and you got filthy dirty, and you came home and your mom said, clean up and go to bed. Right? That was the kid that got your imagination going. I'm here to tell you that person still lives in you, and it's okay to let it out. And here's why that's important. As a counselor, when I see people coming in with depression and anxiety, the problem is not a problem often of brain chemistry, although it can be. For most of us, the problem is that we have lost faith in ourselves. and we become disconnected from our innate selves. Okay? Carl Jung talks about the persona and the shadow side of our personality. He was a great psychotherapist back in Freud's era, and he talked about the shadow as our unconscious. So there's a side that we show to the world, and then there's an unconscious part of us that we don't really want to look at. And when we stop dreaming on the persona side, on the light side, it gets pushed down into the dark, and our dreams start to become nightmares. And what this looks like is road rage. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we start just completely interpreting that as some kind of personal affront, and we become very angry. It looks like cynicism. We stop believing that the world can be a good and decent place. It looks like violence. Every school shooting, and tragically there have been so many over the past few years in our country, stem from a person who felt disempowered and disconnected from who they were, and they wanted public esteem. And if you want to be famous and notorious, the easiest way to do it is to buy a gun and use it. And if we take this one shade darker, if you think about every dictator in history, the first thing a dictator will do when they want to take power is they outlaw dreaming. They come for the dreamers, the philosophers, the artists, the educators, the people in the audience that come to listen. They take us away first. Because they know that dreaming is revolutionary, and if you want to crush the soul of the people, you outlaw dreaming. Happily, and fortunately, the great social revolutionaries also understood how powerful dreaming is. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream for a reason." He didn't say, like, "I have a roadmap." That's kind of boring. He said, "I have a dream." Because dreaming is what excites us. Dreaming is what lights us up and brings us to life. So how can you do this in your communities? How can you do this in your life? And conveniently, I have the answer. So all great, like all great social revolutions, ours began with a tweet. So our friend Kristen Dokas took this picture at the Dallas-Fort Worth Art Museum. This is the imagination room. So I want you to imagine like a big room like this, and there's fans blowing around, and there's little slips of paper in the air that have quotes about dreaming and imagination on them, and you can read them and kind of toss them back up in the air. And Kristen went and thought, "This is awesome. How do we do this in Winston-Salem, which is where I live?" She took this picture and tweeted it to our friend Cheryl Shirillo, who had an idea, had a spark of a dream. Now Cheryl could have sat on that and never spoken it and gone about her life very conveniently. But 2 years ago, she brought a group of us together to say, "Hey, what about this? Can we create an intentional space for dreaming and imagination here in Winston-Salem?" And all of us being really gung-ho said, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do this thing." So now, 2 years later, hundreds of volunteers, numerous community events, art installations, digital media, we have created a social capital movement in Winston-Salem called the Imagination Installations Project. And we believe most deeply in harnessing the collective power of our community's dreams. And we believe there's nothing more important than this process. I'm going to show you some pictures of what our gatherings look like. We begin everything we do with what we call an Imagine Win statement. Many of you have done this already. They're out in the lobby, so please do one today before you go. And what's funny about this is when we do Imagine Wins, kids who come up to our events are like, "Yeah, let's do this thing." And they have dreams like crazy. They make like 50 of them, and we have to stop them. Adults come up, and they're like, a lot of adults, the first thing we get is, "Yeah, it's cute. What are you doing?" Like we have this little cute little dog, and they're like, "Yeah, that dog's really cute." And they don't quite get it. Often that's followed by fear. And then the most tragic one that I get a lot, about I'd say 1 in 3 people, 1 in 3 adults says this, "Yeah, I don't have a dream." And they kind of laugh at it, like, "I don't have a dream. That's silly." But it's heartbreaking. Think about that. I don't have a dream. I don't know what I'm dreaming for myself. I don't have anything in my life above what I see immediately in front of me. That's tragic to me. That breaks my heart. So we gather people together, we do these Imagine Win statements, and we post them. And what we create is this opportunity for a Me Too moment, where people look at the dreams and they start to say, "Wow, I was thinking the same thing." And what's incredible about this, and I love this part, we have done these events at the country club with the wealthiest citizens of Winston-Salem, and we have done this with teenagers who live in some of the hardest parts of town, and they have the same dang dreams. They all want stronger communities, healthier families, better opportunities in school, enough for everyone to eat. This is what we're all dreaming collectively in our community, and when we come together and discuss it, there's a spark of recognition that we're the same. and we can talk about the same things. Another moment I want to share with you from one of our meetings, one of our members came in and she had just left work, and she had this conversation before she left work. One of her coworkers came up and said, "Do you know what your problem is?" And just aside, as a counselor, it is a terrible way to start feedback. But he says to her, "Do you know what your problem is?" And she's like, "No." And he said, "You are too positive and enthusiastic." And so she came to our event with like her heart and her hand just like bent over like, oh God. And you could see how much that hurt her, that someone had told her how positive and enthusiastic she was and what a problem that was. So we started writing our Imagine Win statements, and as she was writing, you can see her her shoulders going back, and I don't remember what she wrote down, but in the end of it, what she said, and this is what we almost always say when we're at these events, and just let you know, we're all volunteers, so we're not getting paid for this. But we all say, "I so needed to be here today, and this was the best part of it." We all feel that way. We leave those gatherings ready to go out, back to our jobs, back to our lives, and be more imaginative and creative in what we do. So all of this is kind of light and fluffy stuff, I think, to some people. I'm also a scientist, so I want to drop a little knowledge on you, if that's okay. For those of you who may be skeptical about this. For a long time, we in the mental health field felt that the brain just sort of started to atrophy at a certain point and stopped developing. We know now that's completely wrong. What we know now is that neuroplasticity is actually a truth of how our brains operate. It is developing and changing and evolving over the course of our entire lives. Until the day we die, we can fix and change and alter our brain. And we do that by changing our thoughts. And if you think about the act of building a new superhighway, when we have imaginative thoughts and creative thoughts, that's what happens, is we create a new superhighway in our brains. And so as we have old thoughts that die, they're like superhighways that just sort of crumbled into the ground again, and we stop using them. So at any point in life, we have an opportunity to change the way we think, the way we believe, what we value, how we act, the way we work, the way we play, the way we love each other. You can change that at any point in your life just by changing the way you think about it. That's how powerful imagination is. And imagination studies have taken off in multiple fields, including biology, psychology, philosophy. What we're finding in stroke patients who have been weakened on one side after the stroke is that by using their imagination, they can actually strengthen that side of their body just by thinking about it. This is how powerful this is. And I love all that stuff, and I geek out about it, and if I had 20 more minutes, I'll talk about that. But the reason I'm telling you this is that your brain is a powerful thing, but what we know from the Imagination Installations Project and from my own experience as a human being is we don't actually dream with our heads, we dream with our hearts. This is where our dreams come from that vulnerable part in us that just wants to be seen and heard and understood. We create these projects because we create those opportunities in our community for people to see each other and to start talking about the things that bother us, to get concerned about the school across town that looks like it's falling down, or to wonder about a law that doesn't seem right, or to question what's happening in that neighborhood that we never go to that seems kind of sad. How do we fix these problems? And we can't do that until we come together and start dreaming about it. This is one of my favorites, the wonder of looking at all those dreams and contemplating them. So what can you do about this? How can you start incorporating this in your own life? Innovative companies like Google and Apple have already caught on to how important dreaming and imagination really are. Google offers its employees 20% of their work week to focus solely on passion projects. Because here's the big news. We're actually not that motivated by money. We're not. We're motivated by what's coming out inside of us. We're motivated by our passion, by our love, by our dream, and by our vision. And when we allow it to catch fire, we can do amazing things. And Google gets that. And it gives people an opportunity to innovate in that way. So create that intentional space. I encourage you to make dreaming and imagination a practice in your daily lives, like you would exercise or meditation. 5 minutes of dreaming. Get up and out of your to-do list and figure out what it is you want for your life. What is the big picture for what you want? Dream in the positive. Your brains can't picture a negative. It can do lots of cool things, but it can't do that. So if I tell you not to think about zebras, I would bet my retirement every person in here did. Right? That's how our brains work. So dream in the positive. Instead of thinking in terms of imagine when there's no hunger, think in terms of imagine when everyone has enough to eat. Write your imagine when statement down. It's the first act of making a dream present in the physical world. And share it. Share it with your friends. your family, with your community, digitally. Start an Imagine Installations group yourselves and talk about what you're dreaming. If you need further proof, because I started with a sad story, here's the good news. I'm standing here today because Cheryl Shirillo had an idea. Standing on a TED stage is the dream of anybody in my field. It's second only to being on Oprah. So being here, this is my dream. I met my boyfriend through the Imagination Installations project. He left a stifling corporate job to be an artist and a designer, and he helped design the set. We are here living our dreams because we spoke them, and we dared to live them. And you can do it too, every single one of you. You can change your life, you can change your community, you can change the world. So I leave you with this. I want you to imagine you're sitting in that classroom, and those animals are coming over that hill, and they're on the t-ball field, and that dust is kicking up. And they are coming for you. And they're coming to break you out of whatever box you've built around yourself to keep your dreams in. And I just want you to imagine when. Thank you.